I have not watched any of the Trump press conferences on coronavirus, nor have I ever watched a Trump press conference in my life. Do we all remember back when Trump was first elected how we all agreed to never normalize this president? I'll be honest, I am shocked by how many people I know have been watching his press conferences on the coronavirus for information. I don't understand it. Every now and then I'll see a clip from a press conference of Trump's on Twitter, and in the 4 to 5 seconds I watch, every single thing he says and every single thing his administration says is so full of lies, spin, and false narratives, it gives me a sinking feeling in my stomach. And also, watching Trump speak just makes me so violently unhappy. It's an act of self-care to avoid these press conferences or any scenario where he's talking. But understand that his press conferences and our normalization of them is directly responsible for his enormously high approval rating for dealing with this crisis. Trump's approvals are over 60% right now, which proves that people cannot determine for themselves what is fact and what is fiction, which is the entire point of propaganda. If you could tell it was propaganda, it wouldn't be very effective, wouldn't? Plus, it's not their job to determine what's fact and fiction. That is the job of the media. People want a leader they can trust, and because we broadcast these press conferences, people are watching and holding on to someone for dear life. We cannot trust our media sources to do the right thing, as they are funded by the same corporations Donald Trump's policies prop up. We have to take the power into our own hands and shut him out like the plague he is. Everything out of that administration's mouth is toxic, and every moment we spend listening to anything they say is a moment we are giving them more power that they don't deserve. We know Trump has fired everyone who had an inch of integrity in his administration, so we cannot trust what even the CDC says. No way to know how much the tone they use is skewed, why they decide to include certain information, what they're leaving out. Whatever impression any governmental information leaves us with today cannot be trusted. I know it's been 4 years, but let us remember how we felt when Trump was first elected, and we all swore together that we would never normalize him. Resist, we all said. Do not normalize this president. To turn to the Trump administration in an hour of need is the worst choice we could possibly make. These people in the Trump administration are monsters, and they know Americans are desperate right now for leadership. And monsters like this use opportunities like this for one purpose only: profit. They do not care for our health or safety. They only care about profit. And let us not forget, we don't need them for information. We don't need the Trump administration for information. There are alternate, more trustworthy sources where we can get our information. Independent media like the Young Turks, The Intercept, Rising, The Michael Brooks Show, Jacobin, and Secular Talk are not funded by any corporate interests, solely funded by their own viewers. We need to stop trusting corporations and, by extension, our governments, as it is entirely corporate funded. Do not pour any more Trump poison into your ears. Boycott all things Trump, especially now more than ever.
Yeah, I haven't watched any of them either. I mean, largely for the same reasons as you, but also just because we already know what Trump's motives are. He's talked about them many times, and it's obvious from his entire career and administration so far. He cares about ratings. He cares about showmanship over substance. He cares about cheerleading or condemning certain people just based purely on his own political, motives, right? And then also there's just all the straight up disinformation. He owns stock in a company connected to this cure that he's peddling. There's just no reason to. And then also it's just very upsetting. So I haven't watched him either.
Yeah, I just don't know how we can know all the things that we know about Trump, what a grifter he is, what a liar he is, and watch his press conferences as though we're living in a world where now of all times, even Trump, he's the president, okay? He's going to pull his shit together, and during this crisis, he's going to give us the real information. Like, why do we think that? That's exactly what they want us to think. Why is anybody watching any of his press conferences? I think a lot of people watch it because it is great entertainment, like it is entertaining to see the crazy shit that he does, but it's distraction. Like as you're listening to him, you are absorbing what he's saying, whether or not you're fully aware just how deeply you're absorbing it. But everything he says is so deeply a lie on so many levels that it's impossible to,
That's such a good point.
unless you have like an actual fact checker next to you who's pausing every 5 seconds and telling you the 12 lies he managed to tell in the space of 5 seconds, you won't even know how deep the lie goes. Like I watched 5 seconds of his thing and I was like, well, that's a lie, that's a lie, that's a lie. But then I watched like an independent media coverage of it, and it's like the tone that he was using was a lie. Like this entire story is made up whole cloth. Like everything is a figment of his imagination. It's impossible to know where the real world begins and the fake one ends unless you have a watchdog media, which we don't have.
Not to mention, yeah, I was actually going to say before you said that, there are certain reporters there too who are asking like very weirdly framed questions in order to shift the conversation to a weirdly right-wing direction as well. But yeah, I think a lot of people are watching it because it's, it's a cultural thing. Like everyone's watching it, everyone can talk about it, kind of like Tiger King, right? And then, but like you said, they're still receiving that information and maybe not knowing exactly how it's subtly affecting their actual understanding of what's going on.
Right.
And then also maybe people are watching it just to see what's going to happen in our lives or with the stock market, because everything he says has an effect on corporate expected profits. And then also, maybe he'll say something that says everything is going to be open tomorrow, and that's something that we do need to know. It's a terrible way to kind of hold us hostage to listening to his propaganda, because we need to hear what he has to say.
And so I'm saying, like, let independent media translate the toxicity. Do not subject yourself to the toxicity.
That's what I do.
Well, yeah, exactly. Wait until he says everything that he says, then have professionals who it is in their financial interest to tell us the truth, because if they are funded by their viewers, then they know that they need to cater to us, and we're an inherently informed viewer base, and so we know that we want to hear the truth from them. I mean, it's just like, again, if we watch a Trump press conference, we have normalized him. And I don't care if we're watching it making fun of him, we're still watching him speak to us as the leader of the United States during a pandemic, an impeached strongman authoritarian who did not even win the popular vote is the guy that's sitting in the Oval Office right now. I mean, I like how Ayanna Pressley calls him the occupant of the White House. She doesn't call him the president, she calls him the occupant. And I think that we all need to remember that. AOC didn't go to his State of the Union. We need to be taking our cues from leaders that we trust and believe in, ones that are not corporate funded, who are actually fighting for the people. The moment that we sit there and listen to him for information is the moment that we've lost the normalization battle.
And the last thing that I want to say about normalizing Trump is that I always keep in mind that Noam Chomsky quote that the Republican Party is the most dangerous organization in history, because he was referring to things like the climate crisis and how profit is just put above all else, even just at the total destruction of the natural world and, working class people. But I think we're continuing to see that in this crisis now, and we'll continue to see it as long as we have the Republican Party in power. Even though Trump was an outsider, he hasn't done anything particularly different from what the Republican Party has always done. So I think he very much is part of this quote unquote most dangerous organization in history.
Yeah, and the reason that they hate Trump is because of their own vanity. They hate that Trump is showing the ugly side of them up front. Like Trump is just so inept as a kind of diplomat, as a person who is like, Trump is one of the greatest liars of all time, and yet he's terrible at it, and they just hate that he is revealing who they all are. He's like, no, he's terrible PR for us every time he gets out there, and he's showing just how shitty and corrupt all of our value systems are. And that's why we want to get rid of him, because he offends us physically, not even because of his value set, because it's the same as theirs.
Yeah, he also doesn't really have any party loyalty. Like he has no problem turning on individual members of the Republican Party. So I can see why they'd all be scared. But at the same time, he's still, doing all of these horrific and dangerous things. So that's really just like a personal danger to them, not really anything about the systemic dangers that he is causing.